Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Canada on March 12, 2026. On February 28th, the day on which the Trump and Netanyahu regimes launched their latest criminal war on Iran, protests erupted in Pakistan at the United States consulate in Karachi.
अमेरिकी कौंसल खाने को आग लगा दिया है। अमेरिकी कौंसल खाने कराची को आग लगा दिया है। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह रहबर पर हमले का बदला लिया जा रहा है।
Now, anti-U.S. protests were not confined to the U.S. consulate in Karachi. As this report from WION explains, the protests expanded into the streets of some Pakistani cities, and they turned deadly.
At least 10 people have been killed near the U.S. consulate in Pakistan's Karachi. This is after protests broke out following the killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Israeli-U.S. attacks. While hundreds of protesters gathered outside the U.S. consulate and chanted slogans. A crowd of young people climbed over the main gate and gained access to the driveway of the consular building, smashing some windows, and Pakistan police were seen firing tear gas at the protesters.
Now, by March 2nd, Pakistan's police had killed reportedly at least 23 protesters, including 10 in Karachi. And the death toll, I understand, is now more than 30 persons. In the port city, Karachi, that is, thousands attended the funerals of the protesters, some of them wearing Palestinian kufias.
A police report should be lodged against the officials of state institutions for the firing carried out by the state thugs and terrorists in Karachi today. This is our most important demand. Additionally, our youth who were arrested today on March 1 should be released immediately.
Now, has the anger subsided? Is the situation under control? And if not, where is this all heading? To discuss the situation in Pakistan, we're joined again today by our friend Aman Ullah Tariq, co-host of the EON podcast in Pakistan. EON offers political analysis of the conditions in the country, but also the broader region, and is widely followed. Now, last time I checked, you had nearly 400,000 subscribers. Thank you for joining us again today, Aman Ullah.
It's a pleasure to be here. Assalamu alaikum to everybody, and thank you for having us. It's an ugly situation, but thank you for having us.
So before we begin, Aman Ullah, I would just want to remind our viewers that if they find this video to be informative, please like and share it. And if you're not already a subscriber to Reason to Resist, we warmly encourage you to become one and help us to expand the reach of our unapologetic resistance journalism. So with that, Mani, let's begin. Has the situation calmed down, the anger subsided, and if not, where do things appear to be heading?
To a large extent, they have. And to the audience, I think I want to clarify as well, as somebody in South Asia, in the global South even literally, I follow Reason to Resist. So I really recommend liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. I genuinely respect the reporting that you do. And it's very eye-opening. I think like one of the classics was the one in Malta. Nobody's done that in that kind of in-depth and detail. Covering the fact that this is like a safe haven for Zionists off break, and then they're buying real estate offshore and what have you. But coming back to the situation in Pakistan, I think more or less it has been contained. However, the paranoia and the fear that the state had built up against the 20-odd-ish% Shia community, which is very politically active and very involved with the Iranian revolutionary spirit, was so great that right now we have suspended public and private school till the 31st. Now, the claim is that this is because of the fuel shortages, but I suspect that the fuel shortages are an excuse, because in earnest, the fuel shortages and the subsequent shutting down of public and private schools and universities was announced well before there was any reason to think that the Strait of Hormuz was closing down. Similarly, Pakistan has about 30 days of officially of official fuel reserves, and we've already paid the price for that. So regardless of that, they added some tariffs. They increased the price locally more exponentially compared to the global rise in oil prices, and they plan on, and it was very unprecedented. We had the Prime Minister come out to discuss the fact. He basically took the news of the last couple of weeks all into one thing, and he made a rare press conference. We do press conferences from the Prime Minister, by the way, when we're at war, when we're going through a national crisis, like if there's a major attack or something, or Corona. Like, we don't do weekly, monthly, even biannual prime ministerial addresses. They're done when it's a crisis. So the entire address was to condense the news of the last couple of weeks, and he condemned the attacks from Israel on Iran. He congratulated the Iranians on their new leadership. He gave his condolences for the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei, and he also talked about the fuel shortages and the crisis we were going to face in the coming days. The reason I suspect that they did the public closures was because a powder keg was sort of forming, which is because the day before that passed, that is the death day or the annual celebration of the death of Ali. Ali is the imam, is the first imam of the Shia religion, and is a very important companion of the Prophet in all of Islam. So even with the Sunnis, he's like one of the most important people in our tradition. But with Shia Islam, he is the second most important religious figure, and they were celebrating his day of martyrdom, and so martyrdom. So it had almost become analogous to the martyrdom of Imam Ali Khamenei, who is also martyred in Ramadan while fasting, in a state of ritual purity, in a state of worship, like Imam Ali, who is the Imam of the Shia tradition and the fourth Caliph of the Sunni tradition. So you end up with this perfect storm. And essentially, the reason why you saw those visuals most intense in Karachi is because, especially amongst the Urdu-speaking diaspora community that came from Uttar Pradesh or Bihar or, different parts of India to migrate into Pakistan with great religious zeal and fervor, obviously, because they're migrating to this new, they're leaving their homelands to move to this new formed Pakistan. That community has a sizable Shia population. And since the Islamic Revolution, they have been at odds in a sectarian sense with their Sunni counterparts in the city. Karachi has had the most violent sectarian clashes when the Saudi and the Irani, when the Irani exporting of the revolution was met with Saudi sort of Wahhabi style sectarianism. So those clashes would sort of peak in and around Karachi, where there's entire neighborhoods. Karachi is perhaps the only city where you will have dedicated neighborhoods to, religious enclaves, as opposed to the rest of Pakistan, where everybody sort of lives together.
You said
would have younger people.
You said the population, the Shia population is about 20% of Pakistan's population, so that would put it at in excess of 50 million people. That's acceptable. And so, is it largely concentrated in the Karachi area, or are they more or less dispersed throughout the country?
No, dispersed throughout. It's not like a Lebanon or a Syria where there's like enclaves and villages or certain ethnic groups that belong to the Shia. No, it's mixed. So all major ethnic groups will have Shia and Sunni, sometimes even Christian. And all major ethnic groups.
As best as you can tell, Aman Ullah, were the protesters overwhelmingly Shia, or did some Sunni Muslims participate as well?
No, Sunnis participated en masse. So the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is the Muslim Brotherhood equivalent of South Asia, was with them throughout. For example, even though the Shias do not believe in the religious practice of absentee prayer, which is when, if God forbid I was to pass, that you could perform in absentia in Greece, in Kalamata, in Canada, or whatever, in my honor, in my memory. Shias don't believe in that legally, but the Sunni tradition does, and the entire cadre and youth wings of the Jamaat Islami did massive funeral prayers in absentia for Ali Khamenei. and those are Sunni. It's a Sunni group primarily. Obviously, the Ikhwan equivalent of South Asia, and uh, the even though the chants and sort of slogans that you're hearing from the young men outside the Karachi consulate or in Islamabad are primarily Shia slogans, but you do see amongst them, you can see them in their behavior or in their religious get-up or garb or speech that there was I would say it was an 80-20, 70-30 kind of split,
Right.
because there's a massive amount of admiration for Iran on the local religious level, and Shia-Sunni cooperation and coordination on a cultural exchange in terms of marriage and business and living together. It's, I think, some of the most ideal in the whole Muslim world. It's in Pakistan and India, in the subcontinent generally.
So other than make speeches, engage in police brutality, and close the schools, did the government make any meaningful concessions to these protesters? Do they have a discrete set of demands, and if so, have any of them been met?
In all honesty, no. What I suspect is because there is only two particular ethnic areas where they are actually purely Shia, like a majority Shia. That is the Parachinar belt, which is a small belt that sticks out of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa like a little chicken neck into Afghanistan. That's a Pashtun belt where it's like purely that ethnic demographic is primarily Shia. And then there's the Gilgit-Baltistan region of the wider Kashmir region, which is a separate disputed province that we sort of wrestled out of India's control in the partition time. So those are Sino-Indic people of the Gilgit-Baltistan, and they are entirely practically Shia, like almost 80-90%. So those are where you found the protests to be very intense, and a lot of those young people did end up going into militia groups into Iraq or into Syria during the sort of Iranian expansion outwards from the early aughts into like the 2015, 16, 17 era, especially during the Syrian civil war. That's where the bulk of the quote-unquote Pakistani militiamen would come in from via Iraq and Iran. So they obviously were young men who were quite charged politically, and they unfortunately ended up attacking a military checkpost. And it seems to be the case that two young infantrymen were killed by the protesters. So that created quite an awkward situation for the government where, they were sort of like gloves off. It was a gloves off kind of thing after that. And since then, they've been fairly quiet. The Shia community, if I had to say in a general sense, is demanding solidarity. It does not expect military intervention of any sort or any sort of overt opposition to America's desires in the region, because they understand they are fully Pakistani and they understand the way Pakistan has always operated with America and with its position in regards to America. But there's an expectation of an overt solidarity amongst the Sunni population as well. As far as the demands having been met or not having been met, a sizable amount of the leadership is also now working with the PTI. So it's also become a problem of domestic point scoring. So they're afraid of any kind of protest. I'll give you an example. In the days following up, on the 8th of March, we have two massive counterculture movements. One is the pro-feministic women's march, and then there is an anti-women's march, and they both meet every year in Islamabad and every major city and sort of shout slogans at each other. It's very funny. It's a truly an event to see. Even those tiny little women's protests weren't allowed. Both groups were arrested and made to disappear for a whole day because the government is super paranoid about any sort of protest spiraling out. Like I was mentioning the day before yesterday, the martyrdom of Imam Ali, the fear was religious processions would get out of hand, or possibly potentially they could have been attacked or made a target by any number of terrorist organizations or government agencies or some sort of saboteurs, and the thing would have turned very, very ugly into a civil war type situation. But I suspect that is more the government's paranoia than the actual on ground realities. On ground, I think even the Shia community is now stable and they understand that the Pakistani government and state is doing it's not behaving ideally, but it's doing what it can. Even in the last conflict, it was doing what it could. And generally, the upper class Shia community is very secular minded. It is not very deeply emotionally linked to Iran, and they're quite nationalistic in their approach. So, because that's the major leadership. As far as the religious leadership is concerned, I think it's still brewing under the surface. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
Well, that certainly is an indication. What one would think by listening to a speech I'm going to share with you that was delivered by, I understand, an opposition legislator in the National Assembly of Pakistan in the aftermath of the murder of the supreme leader. And here's what she had to say.
Speaker, I will be incredibly brief. I have three things to say. Number one, on the martyrdom of the Khamenei, the leader of all the Ahl Shia, the Shias in the world, I don't think anyone in the world at this point has the words to express the kind of trauma we're all going through. I'm Ahl Sunnah, but for the last 4 days, the trauma of Iran, the trauma of the Ahl Shia, it lives within us, it breathes within us. 35 young men, women, and children in Pakistan have laid down their lives in solidarity with the trauma of Islam. Like it or not, Honorable Speaker, the battle lines could not have been clearer. I will share with this House a video interview of Donald Trump in which he insists that Islam is a hateful entity and that Muslims hate him or his country. It is a shameful video. And this House, this Prime Minister, and this President is nominating a man for the Nobel Prize that is terming Islam as hateful. I have proof of that. I shall share it with you. Not only that, Honorable Speaker, the Secretary of War, Peter Hegseth, has yesterday said that anybody who shares prophetic delusional values, prophetic Islamic delusional values, will not be allowed to hold nuclear weapons. Israel, on the other hand, has Jewish prophetic values. They are a child-raping country, along with India. They've made a business out of raping people in prisons, children, men, women. They are allowed to hold nuclear weapons. Honorable Speaker, I've said it a number of times. This House, after God, this House is the most powerful House in Pakistan. We, the representatives of the people from both sides of the galleys, have we not woken up yet? They have openly called you out on your religion, on your nuclear weapons, and your values. I don't have much more to say, Honorable Speaker, except that this is a wake-up call for us. And if we still decide to stay asleep at the wheel, I can assure you, 70% of young Pakistanis under the age of 30, they will slit the throats of everyone in this House if we don't decide to wake up and take control of this country. Pakistan Zindabad. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I will be incredibly brief.
Now, Amanullah, those were fighting words. So much about that speech that I'm interested in discussing with you. First of all, could you tell us who this legislator is and what political faction she represents?
That's Shandana Gulzar Sahiba. She's from the KPK, which is the Pashtun belt. She's Pashtun ethnically. She is in the PTI party, which is the party of Imran Khan. And like with most women politicians post the 2000s, when we had the military dictatorship of General Musharraf, a lot of these women, 90% plus of them, come on reserve seats. Now, reserve seats are unelected positions given to ethnic, religious minorities as well as women. It's not the most democratic procedure to introduce, legislators into the legislative bodies, but, who am I to say? I mean, it's not like I'm a voter or anything. But she's very well spoken, as you can see, and she's always been very well spoken. And with all the criticisms levied against her because of her age and because, she'll retweet, AI videos and what have you, I think this was the most lucid I've ever seen her. This was very well articulated, and I don't see any fault in it.
And so is this a view that you think is widely held amongst the Pakistani people, which is to say that the Trump administration is basically a defiler of Islam, profoundly disrespectful of the peoples of the Muslim world?
100%. they were deeply offended by the Pakistani government's decision to elect them to Nobel, to make them a Nobel laureate, to make him some sort of peacemaker. I think the Pakistani population has been in a state of fear since the 9th May protests, since Imran Khan's government was ousted, and then they did a counter protest, and it turned into an ugly sort of January 6th situation. They say it was a false flag. The government says it was a counter coup. Allah knows best. It was a false flag.
What was the false flag exactly?
The 9th May protests were very similar to the 6th of January. What happened was the PTI opposition leadership, along with ousted government officials, along with party workers, and generally just incensed Pakistani citizens in the thousands, if not the hundreds of thousands, across major Pakistani cities, attacked in protest major military and civil institutions. They didn't do the attacking bit. They just sort of overwhelmed the security forces, and it was quite clear the security forces stood down because clearly, if the protests of the death of Ayatollah Khamenei are anything to show for, clearly we can shoot people, we can kill them. Yeah. And we have no problems doing that, apparently. This is not something very common in Pakistan where security forces, but it's becoming increasingly common since the deposition of Imran Khan's government. Mostly it was just sticks and stones, sort of, Sticks and stones may break your bones, but bullets definitely kill you. It's one of those situations. Mm-hmm. We were never a bullets kind of nation, at least since the 71 fall of Bangladesh, which was the separate wing of Pakistan. We've been a very stick and stone kind of nation. But now, unfortunately, it seems that the violence is definitely at the forefront. And in all honesty, if I had to give a meta-narrative to what happened, we simply took cues from America. We saw the finishing of the liberal world order. We were like, great, no more human rights watchdogs, no more, Human Rights Watch Asia telling us about transgenders or whatever. So the government will still take the freebies, like softball, brownie point things like, oh, here's a small office for intersex people to, issue ID cards or whatever. But the difficult stuff, the difficult questions that the UNHRC might ask or some watchdog might, we don't care about that anymore because liberal democracy is finished. It's backslid everywhere. And who are we? We're not the Greeks, right? I mean, we were Hellenized at one point, but we're not the Greeks. We didn't make this stuff up. This has been a martial territory because it's a very indefensible position. Pakistan is a very slender country, surrounded by 2 mountain ranges and river ranges. This historically has always been a garrison marshalling territory where militaries move in from Central Asia into South Asia, and this is the launching pad into India, if you want to talk about it in a historical military sense. So the army has that doctrine, the state has that doctrine that democracy is a sham that we keep in place to keep the West sort of on even keel so that they know that we have responsible hands, managing the nuclear buttons. But at the end of the day, the West understands it. And you know more than anybody that that all the talk of liberal democracy and human rights is all just like sort of a bullying and sort of browbeating for the third world. It's not real. It's not a real desire to have any sort of regime. I think Trump is just as a naked manifestation of what America has been for the past few hundred years.
I really doubt that he or his predecessors wanted a real democracy in Pakistan.
No, they've gotten along.
Use that anymore, but
they never. This is the thing. We never believed it. The Pakistani elite had a very cynical approach to the West, where a lot of the liberal intellectual elite was allied with the Soviet Union back in the day. So a lot of these socialist leaders or leftist leaders or liberal leaders would go do PhDs and get grants from the Soviet Union in the 70s and 80s. And their big opponent was Ziaul Haq, the military dictator who prosecuted the Soviet jihad, right? And he's the big demon in Pakistani liberal politics. But the Pakistani left, it's a shame to say it, but the moment the Soviet Union dissolved, they immediately turned to the Americans and they started getting USAID money, started setting up NGOs. So like the religious politics of Pakistan got ruined with the Kalashnikov, the secular politics got ruined with the dollar, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody got paid, everybody got fat and rich and happy. The gravy train was running. Everybody's kids became a Shievening scholar or a Rhodes scholar, or, they got some kind of PhD, or they went to some Ivy League, they went to some Oxford or Cambridge or whatever. They got a cushy job at the World Bank. So there's 100,000, 200,000 odd families that are running Pakistan in Karachi and Lahore and Islamabad. They are transracial. They are from different racial groups. They are trans-ethnic. They are trans-religious. They are from all religious and social groups. You can't really identify them as one particular ethnic group. And what they understand is that Pakistan is a big pie, and you need to get the biggest slice out of this thing.
Right.
So it's Pakistan. Whenever I read Yanis Varoufakis, I'm shocked. I think he's talking about Pakistan, by the way. Greece is such a Pakistan situation. And the way he describes the economy, I'm like, this is Pakistan. Like, we skip the industrialization bits and go straight to financialization. I mean, Greece had some industrial base before the coal and steel union, the EU or whatever, but we didn't even have that. We just sort of bypassed it, and here we are.
Well,
So Shandana Sahiba is part of that process.
Right.
Like, the fact that she can speak English and I can speak English we're part of that sort of social class.
I just want to
right?
ask you about that because
Yeah.
it was striking to me that she had a message that was quite critical of the U.S. government, and she articulated her message in English. Is that the language that people normally speak in the National Assembly, or did she make an exception in order to address herself to a Western audience?
I think this was a Twitter speech. I think this was the talking points came from Twitter, and the speech was made for Twitter. And it's a strange turn because initially, unfortunately, the PTI argued a very principled, consistent stance that we have been ousted by the Americans. This was the initial claim about 3 years ago. And then they backslid from that, and then they came to the thing of, oh no, we have to lobby the Americans. And they were a big part of lobbying Trump, by the way, the Pakistani community. Obviously, not a big role in America, but a big role in Pakistan that was being played was the idea that Trump will come in and he will force the state to somehow let Imran Khan go and let democracy, take its course. This was an absurd idea. I don't know why. Yeah, this is insane. I don't know why the PTI pursued this.
Trump would liberate Imran Khan. That's wow.
It's insane. It's insane. They had lobbyists in America. They were paying big money to characters very unsavory characters from the Afghan, Pakistan, big American conflict time. And they thought that, these guys in Washington will help us get out. Nothing happened. Just a few tweets from some senators, Imran Khan, we need to talk about Imran Khan, and a little bit of finger wagging. And the moment Pakistan delivered India on a silver platter after the May conflict, silence. Because they were like, Pakistan's done the job. We don't care about Imran Khan or military dictatorship or not. They want India. They want the Indian market softened up. And what better than, Israel is the fatherland and India is the motherland? What better than what Modi's done? If we give Trump a tongue bath, did you see Modi's tongue bath to Netanyahu in Israel?
Here's the subject. Here's Modi receiving the gold medal of depravity in the Knesset from the Knesset speaker. I really wanted to get your a Pakistani perspective on this disgraceful affair. How was this received in your country?
We giggled, we laughed, but there's a kind of like self-hating, sort of nihilistic kind of humor in Pakistan, which even the Indians note. Usually around cricket season, where no one hates Pakistan more than Pakistanis. I wasn't shocked by it, but it was I think the magnitude shocked me. It was quite clear that Israelis and Indians have been in cooperation for a long time, since the 50s and 60s, but it was more of a covert operation. And they've adopted the policies, whether they have liberal governments or the conservative governments of Modi, they have adopted the policies of settler colonialism from Israel and applied them to Kashmir and other disputed territories in India. And even the technology transfers. And we understood that the H-1B visas, it's not that they can't find American tech CEOs. We're not stupid. We see it. We see that. And we understand that this large influx of Indian immigrants into America and Canada is part of that politicking. It's a sort of a reward in exchange for Indian servitude. And we know that the big billionaires of India, Adani, Ambani, they're completely in service to the greater transnational elite, whether that be in Tel Aviv or in Washington or in Geneva or wherever. But this is a complete principal departure from Indian foreign policy even. So his predecessors in the Hindutva leagues, in the Hindutva parties, like, for example, Atal Bihari Vajpayee was a Prime Minister of India who is like a titan of Hindutva. Even he's respected in Pakistan. And even amongst the Muslim community in India, he's respected because he was a very principled Hindutva guy. And a real ruthless prime minister, very like a formidable opponent to Pakistan. He had a very clear principled stance that the Arab land is Arab land, Israel is a settled colonial state, and we cannot. And India is the only major non-Muslim country to always support Palestine. This is a complete principal departure in Pakistan. Pakistan is giggling, by the way, because India is basically with its own knife has slaughtered its own foreign policy for the next quarter century. There is no escaping this now. Like if you look at the fact that Iran, when in May Pakistan and India were having their conflict, Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi was in Delhi negotiating trade deals, even when the war was happening. And Pakistan is not like best friends with Iran or anything. We have had actually always a post-revolution, always like a kind of a stalemate kind of relationship. Nor friends nor enemies, neither friends nor enemies. But now they forced the hand where Iran has even attacked cargo vessels carrying, oil and products to India.
Sorry,
right?
I just want to stop there because I want to ask you specifically about the military alliance between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia that they entered into last year. This is a very dicey situation, I would imagine, for Pakistan because it did enter into that alliance, and Saudi Arabia, U.S. military facilities in Saudi Arabia have been attacked. Iran also attacked the CIA station at the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. There's some indication that there were attacks on Saudi oil facilities and a lot of debate about whether Iran was behind that. I understand Iran denies it, but and that there are allegations that there were Mossad agents in the country who staged a false flag. But whatever may have happened around the attack on the oil facility, I believe it was a massive refinery, it is very clear that Iran has struck U.S. military targets inside Saudi Arabia. And yet I've seen no indication whatsoever that Pakistan has reacted in any way militarily to this. Even the rhetoric of the government seems to be quite restrained. What's going on there, Aman Ullah? What do you think is going through the minds of the leaders of Pakistan as they contemplate the war on Iran and their military alliance with Saudi Arabia?
The Saudi military alliance is something that has its DNA go back all the way to the start of Pakistan. Pakistan has always described Saudi Arabia as a elder brother nation. Saudi Arabia practically financed our nuclear development. And it's always been understood that Saudi Arabia is, that Pakistan understands the Gulf and the Middle East through the vector of Riyadh, right? In that relationship, it's always been a balancing act between, the UAE and Qatar so Doha and Abu Dhabi will always be two other vectors through which we view this. But Saudi Arabia, Riyadh has been the dominant one. The agreement while it is a formal and ratified one, it's always existed. And that was simply posturing in earnest about actually showing up for the job. What I suspect it is primarily a backdoor for Saudi to access Chinese technologies. Because historically, we've always trained their militaries, their pilots, their air force, their civil airliners, their civil infrastructure. A lot of the immigrant forces labor force is Pakistani in Saudi. They're very dependent on our human resources, and we're very dependent on their financial bailouts and oil packages and what have you. So it's sort of understood that an attack on Saudi Arabia is an attack on Saudi Arabia proper. When you mention the Aramco facility, and it is the oil facility, it's the biggest one in the region, that attack coupled with that false flag, that's considered a false flag in Pakistani discourse, that attack coupled with the revelations given by Tucker Carlson that Qatar and Saudi caught Mossad agents, again, that is an informal way, because diplomatically you never acknowledge that, we have some spies that we just caught in the state of this war. That's a way for the governments of Saudi and Qatar to give the signal that, because Saudi and Oman being attacked is unreasonable for Iran. It's just not within the realm of reasonability. And it seems to us in the rhetoric and discourse in Pakistan right now is that the Chief of Army Staff, Asim Munir's visit with Khalid bin Salman, the brother of Mohammed bin Salman, was a visit for the reassurance of keeping a back channel open with Iran. And it seems quite clear that since then, a clear detente has been achieved where Saudi proper will not be attacked, And the Khalij, which is Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE, are fair game for Iran. Saudi and Oman are not. Whether or not Saudi Arabia is arguing for the case of Oman, I'm not aware. It's definitely arguing its own case. But Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain are fair game, and this is not something that we're gonna react to. It's also quite clear that the batteries and radar systems that have been moved in sharply to protect Israel, leaving the Gulf populations and Gulf, defense centers vulnerable, it's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call 40, 50 years in the making, because the problem is it goes all the way back to the BCCI days. Everything links back to the BCCI and the nuclear program and the Soviet war. At that time, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia were cooperating at a level which was, we were invincible in the region. We were prosecuting the war in Bosnia. We were prosecuting the war in Chechnya. We were hosting thousands and thousands of international jihadi fighters. We were developing nuclear weapons. Pakistan was proliferating them all over the region. North Korea right now, people are making jokes about North Korea. We gave them the nukes. We developed their program for them. The Iraqis, the Iranis, the Libyans, whoever. All those programs failed, but Pakistan was on top. BCCI was moving money in and out of Latin America. There are rumors that we were about to bail out Batista. Sorry, not Batista, the other one. What's the other Latin American fascist guy that fell? This is Batista and one of them, right? Pinochet, I suspect, if I'm not wrong, we were trying to buy out America First Bank, right, with the BCCI Gulf money. Pakistan and Saudi were making big moves in our regions, right? All that, the crackdown happens with John Kerry's, BCCI bill. The Americans, the British, the French, they crack down on our assets. Then it leads up to the war on terror and 9/11. Everything changes for us, right? So the initial problem is still the same. When Osama bin Laden and the international jihad movement take a departure from the Gulf and they say, why are you moving in American forces, these crusading forces into the Arab world? Why are you bringing them into the Hijaz, which is a religious holy territory of Saudi Arabia, right? It's for all Muslims. And that's the initial, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Osama bin Laden, kind of a popular figure in our region. That's the main problem that they had. That's the split between the jihad movement and the religious establishment of Saudi, and the blowback is what Pakistan and Saudi have been dealing with since. All the forms of terrorism, and in that vacuum, that is when Iran grows as an ally of the Americans in Iraq and in Afghanistan, as a declared ally for the Americans. And it's just one of those oversight things where, oops, now you have a Shia crescent spreading from Iran all the way into Lebanon. So if you look at the way it's transitioned from 3 years ago, when MBS is saying that Iran and Khamenei is the Hitler of the region, to now where they're having open diplomatic relations and historic meetings, and it clearly, and even though the American news media tried to signal that the Saudis were in on it, I don't think the Saudis want, or any of the Gulf countries want, a long protracted war in the region. On top of that, if you look at the joint statement just this morning that Indonesia, Pakistan, UAE, Qatar, Saudi, and some other Muslim countries gave, which was the demand from the Israelis to evacuate the Masjid al-Aqsa compound and to reallow the Muslims of Palestine to start praying in it. For the UAE, that is unprecedented, right? Because the Abraham Accords had changed the game, and the Saudis before the 7th of October wanted to maintain a balance with friendship with Israel and friendship with Iran. They wanted to maintain a new balance, right? Because the boogeyman of Iran was scary, sure, but the boogeyman of Israel had become scarier. And in that detente, they wanted to be, and in that they wanted Pakistan on board with the Abraham Accords. But the Abraham Accords are like, now even the UAE is questioning the Abraham Accords. Mm-hmm. Even the UAE is giving statements. It's impossible for the UAE to give a statement like this.
Yeah, military force will do that to you. It's like it's a slap in the face. But just I want to come back to, so let me just put a finer point on this. So it sounds to me as though you anticipate that the Pakistani government in the months ahead is going to try hard to stay out of this war. And it doesn't sound like the Saudis have a problem with that, that they too would like to remain not only themselves out of this war, but they'd like Pakistan to remain out of this war. Is that more or less your assessment of the situation?
That's a fair assessment of the situation, and I don't think the Gulf is interested in a long, protracted war. And I think it's a very fortuitous that Pakistan certainly found itself embroiled in Afghanistan right at the time of the Iran conflict.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you about that next. This is a report, I believe it's this morning actually, from Al Jazeera, which may or may not be biased when it comes to this war. And it reports that children were among victims in shelling from Pakistan of Afghanistan. I don't have any information about whether this report is accurate or not accurate, but it is clear that there have been some very serious military altercations between Pakistan and Afghanistan in the last several weeks. And I wanted to get your sense of why this is happening, and in particular, the timing of it struck me as rather suspicious because, the orange psychopath in the White House announced a few months ago that he wanted Bagram Air Base back in Afghanistan after, the whole of NATO fled the country with its tail between its legs in 2021. So Donald Trump now wants basically the Taliban to just cede that military base to them. And one interpretation, and it's just a speculation on my part about what is going on here, is that the United States is using Pakistan as a proxy to force the Taliban to make a concession to the U.S. government. But again, that's sheer speculation. In your view, why are these military clashes occurring, and how serious are they?
There's a multi-layered analysis to be done, and with Pakistan and Afghanistan, the trigger point definitely it's always America in the recent memories. But the first problem is Pakistan's and Afghanistan geography is a bit contentious. It's not so simple because once you cross over into Pakistan, it's clear, uninterrupted, flat land for quite a bit. And historically, these two regions have not had clear, distinct boundaries. The Durand Line, which was established by the British, named after an officer, Durand, it's not so easy to separate tribes and ethnic groups that are, linguistically, culturally the same, religiously the same. That problem notwithstanding, as a historical problem of dispute between Afghanistan and Pakistan, Afghan regimes have always been hostile to Pakistan since its formation, since the start. There's only been one historical incident in the last 70, 80 years where you had a Taliban regime of 96. That was an Afghan regime, positive and partial to Pakistan, just for a very brief period from 96 to 2001 until the collapse. That is the only period in Afghan-Pakistan modern history where these two countries have had a stable relationship. Right, there's the border right there. As you can see, it's a cartoonishly large contiguous border, and Afghanistan is a landlocked country. Pakistan banked on Pakistan, basically Afghanistan views the Afghan Taliban, the religious population views. So you have to split up the Afghan population in a couple of groups. You have Afghan/Pashtun nationalists who are more secular minded or liberal minded and aligned with America, and they were aligned with the Ashraf Ghani government. They are mostly in diaspora, and those are the ones you will see online on Twitter hating on Pakistan. They hate Pakistan because Pakistan double gamed the Americans by supporting the TTP or the Taliban, the Pakistani version of the Taliban or the Afghan version of the Taliban, both at the same time to fight off the Americans, even though we were a principal NATO ally. The religious community in Afghanistan, whether they're Tajik, Persian-speaking, or Taliban-backed like Pashtun, they hate Pakistan because of the principled decision Pakistan gave to agree with the American war in Afghanistan. So it's like a catch-22 situation. The two major segments of Afghan society hate Pakistan for different reasons. On top of that, there is a racial, ethnic, nationalist narrative which sees the Persian-speaking people of Afghanistan and the Pashto-speaking Pashtun people of Afghanistan as ethnically superior to Pakistan, because we're seen as a ruled people, because historically the warlord kings that would come in from Central Asia would come through Afghanistan, and many of them would be Afghans. And so there's like that going on in the sort of the local cultural level. On a state-to-state level, the issue is that Pakistan weaponizes trade and access to the sea for Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, post its liberation from the Americans, has been very isolated with very few instances of relationships with China and Russia. its primary dependency is on India, and its expectation was that Pakistan would again serve Afghanistan's interests and then start to help rebuild Afghanistan and cover up for the mistake of supporting the Americans. The Pakistani side expected capitulation on the trade situation completely, and it would be the other way around, where the Afghans would be uh, very, very grateful to Pakistan, and so on and so forth. So on a trade level, that is the main problem, that we both weaponize trade against each other. Afghanistan then subsequently pursues a policy of fomenting ethnic or religious movements in the Balochistan or in the Khyber and then incubating them. And either that is a case of oversight or a case of them being unable to manage the Baloch dissidents or the TTP, or them simply supporting them because they see them as their kinfolk, because many of them are ethnically or tribally linked to the Afghan Taliban. So the series of terrorism, that the terrorist attacks that Pakistan has faced, and we've lost around 5,000 security personnel and a larger number of civilians over the last 10 years, especially around the time when Afghanistan has been liberated, last 5 years, sorry. So Pakistan eventually had to pursue a policy where they started to, and you've seen this build up in the last couple of years, even before the Bagram airbase claim from Trump. So I don't agree entirely that it's an internationalist agenda. I don't think the Americans want to come into Afghanistan anymore. I don't think that is the case. I think they want to establish themselves well in the Indian Ocean with the Indians. Because if it is an issue of containment of China, I think they're set for the future.
So that was
right?
basically Donald Trump just talking out of his ass again when he...
That is Donald Trump. That is Donald Trump doing what he does actually, not being a peacemaker, but creating trouble for the region. That created a lot of panic in both Afghan management and Pakistani management, of course.
Just to clarify, Amanullah, the contested border areas, is that up there? So in the map, we can see darker colored Northwest Frontier Territory. And then to the south, west of that, something called the federally administered tribal areas. Is this where the border is contested? Is this where the clashes are happening? Where on the where's the violence?
That's the majorly contested border area. But even the one in Balochistan, if you see along the Helmand area and around Quetta in Pakistan, even this part of the border is contested.
Oh wow! So
the entire
basically almost the entire length of the border, parts of it are.
The whole line is a British construct, and it has created a lot of problems. So now Pakistan is wants to maybe go in and create a buffer zone with Afghanistan. The rhetoric around Afghanistan and Pakistan from both sides is very retarded, by the way. Afghans try to present Pakistan as a colonial Israeli-style state, which it's not. Most people are like 90% plus Pakistanis are native from the different regions of Pakistan. Pakistan tries to project Afghanistan as some sort of ethno-nationalist, religious, buffer state. But I think the more accurate claim is that Afghanistan's entire being is not real. Afghanistan is a more of a regional territory as a buffer zone created by the British. This is a bit of geographical reality, because these two territories, the southern part of Afghanistan and Pakistan, would always be one contiguous area, and the northern parts of Afghanistan would go into Tajikistan and other Stan countries. But the carved out version of Afghanistan that you see is more of a British construct. And they say we're the British construct, we say they're the British construct. And at the end of the day, it leads to a very disputed situation. Unfortunately, right now, Afghanistan is cooperating very closely with India. And if you look at the region, India's only ally in the region is Afghanistan, and Afghanistan's only ally in the region is India, which is insane. Like if you said that to me 10, 15 years ago, that India is diplomatically isolated with Israel, America, and Afghanistan, I would think you're crazy. But they've completely ruined the relationship with the region, and they have, especially with this move of them going into Israel.
Let's just pause there for a moment. I do want to ask you about this as well, since you mentioned their isolation. It was amazing that Modi, prostrated himself before the Zionist regime. Just a day or two before they launched a criminal war of aggression on Iran, and Iran is a member of BRICS, like India, and then we had this incident where an Iranian naval vessel that was part of a military exercise, a peaceful military exercise, and was unarmed, was torpedoed by a U.S. submarine off the waters of Sri Lanka just after it left Indian waters. And the Indian government didn't, not only did it not condemn this, and not only did it not come to the aid of the sailors who survived the torpedo attack, but an Indian general came out and just said straight up, we have an alliance or a military relationship with Israel, and we notified them of the departure of this Iranian naval vessel from our waters at the time of its departure. What the hell's happened to India? It seems almost as though its government is on a mission to alienate other members of the BRICS. I mean, how do you see this from your neck of the woods?
I think that BRICS mythology is finally coming to its conclusion. I think BRICS was some Washington lobbyist imagined it up, and I've even heard jokes about how the S part was just they needed to fill the S up, so they were like South Africa maybe. The BRICS mythology was something that unfortunately the global left pushed very hard, and I think that was very short-sighted. The BRICS mythology is never been real, and India has always been very deeply linked, especially since the Kargil War of '89 and the '90s and 2000s liberalization of India at the hands of the Americans is very deeply linked to the global homo, internationalist kind of agenda, and it might have been a protectionist, non-aligned country in the '60s and '70s, but it has not been since the '90s. Indian IT boom, the large exporting of the Indian population, all of the made in India iPhones, all of that stuff comes, since the Obama years especially. Obama is one of the big patrons of India. But you see it really peak when Biden launches the Quad Alliance. Now, what's the Quad Alliance? The Quad Alliance is the Japanese bankrolling the Americans like always. It's the Australians being the naval fighting arm, and it's India. And the Quad Alliance is even given nuclear submarines, right? Which is nuclear proliferation technically. I don't know any better. I'm not an expert on international law or anything. Not that that matters anymore. But the Americans subvert the deal that the French originally had with the Australians, give it to the failing industry in the United Kingdom. Both illegal operations, by the way. You cannot give nuclear power submarines to a non-nuclear nation. That was a glove-off moment for everybody in Pakistan. Everybody knew what was coming. They wanted to secure the sea lanes, and they wanted to create this buffer area for China not to escape with its industrial might. Because as much as you produce, you have to get it out of the country eventually, or otherwise you'll have a slowing down, which we see in China is happening. The Quad Alliance was seen as this ability to contain China. But India failed on that front completely in the Galwan Valley incident when the Chinese used their version of the discombobulator, or as Trump describes it, or whatever supersonic, hypersonic, mind discombobulating Havana virus, Havana syndrome thing that they have. And they beat the Indian soldiers with sticks to death, right? This is a real recorded incident. And to this day, it's been 5 or 6 years, the Indian Prime Minister has never acknowledged that event. Insane, right? A country of 1 billion people, dozens of soldiers die at the hands of a hostile nation, and you never acknowledge it. So the Indians fail at that time, or simply refuse to perform. And then comes the stick end of the deal. Biden was offering the carrot end because that's how the American establishment plays the game, right? The Democrats are the carrots, and then the stick comes with the Republicans. Trump comes in and he arm twists them, and lo and behold, falls in his lap like a completely surrendered, air defenseless India when Pakistan completely decimates their air force and air defenses in the May engagement. So since then, who believes that the American Supreme Court is real anymore? It just comes in and it says, oh, the tariffs are illegal, and actually you have to allow your trade partners because we made the NAFTA agreement. Remember the NAFTA agreement in Bill Clinton's time? It's a complete sham. We understand how the game... This is very... I'm in the realm of pure schizophrenia right now, by the way. This is not how states operate, but as an outside observer, I see what the game is being played. And... you're aware of the Israeli colonies in India even. They have different holiday colonies. They have their own territories. They have drone factories. When they fought Pakistan, Israeli drones came, they were being operated by Israeli operators. It's quite clear that the inevitable end is that India is going to be in the region as the big bad for American interests and for imperial interests. Now it's just a mask off moment. It's been building up for 20, 30 years. BRICS was a kind of like in my language, you would say that that India was building up like a buying rate. You know what I mean? It was inflating its value to the Americans. And Pakistan did what it does always best, is deflate some of India's value and then sort of force them to go with their tail between their legs to the Americans. And we do the same vice versa for China, by the way. We sort of bully China into taking care of us. And that's how the cookie crumbles. Modi is a construct of a human being. The Pakistani establishment does not believe he's the real operator behind this thing.
Yeah.
We understand that it is a Brahmanical, Gujarat-based business elite, like, these Adani characters and Ambani characters who are getting, coal extraction deals in Australia, which is going to be refined in one province of India and then it's going to be sold to the Israelis. Like that's a Kissinger deal if I've ever seen one,
Yeah.
when he would show up with the Daewoo company to build your roads and to give you cars and trains or whatever. That's one of those fake deals.
Yeah, I just want to point out, I've put up on the screen here a poll that was just done of surveyed 24 nations' views on Israel. Unfortunately, they didn't include Pakistan, but they did include predominantly Muslim nations, and others, not Pakistan. You see there, India, 80% have a negative view of Israel, and 17%. I'm sorry, Indonesia, 80% have a negative view, and 17% have a favorable view of Israel. Turkey is off the charts. Turkey, I believe, was yes, there it is. 93% have a negative view of Israel, and 4% have a positive view. For me, the surprise was India. Because I expected there to be a larger proportion of the population that had a favorable view, because the government's policies towards the Indian government's policies towards Israel, as we've been discussing, are extraordinarily warm, and yet it's almost evenly split. 34%, according to this poll, in India have a positive view, and 29% have a negative view. So it's far from a majority having a positive view. So I guess what I'm saying is Modi's policies with respect to Israel are not necessarily popular amongst the Indian people themselves. Do you think that's fair?
What they've done is, here's the thing. India and Pakistan have this special ability where, because we have such large populations under the poverty line, it doesn't even matter what the majority bulk of the population actually thinks. Right. It's these urban voting populations, especially the middle class, who are paying the taxes, working the jobs. That's the battleground, right, with India and Pakistan. It's a weird, because when you look at the numbers and you think 1 billion people, in all honesty, it's just a couple of 100 million people who are doing the voting and the actual. And even if a larger portion is voting, but they're not actually, Israel is not on the ballot. Middle Eastern foreign policy is not on the ballot. They have petty political local issues, and the messaging is as such and is so controlled that what they've actually done is they have a very sizable minority, which is the radicalized sort of urban populations that have been inundated for the last 20, 30, 40 years through Bollywood, through music, through entertainment, especially through the news media. There was a whole phenomenon in the 2000s called the foxification of Indian news media. Very funny phenomenon. If you look at their news channels, particularly hilarious, graphics all over the screen, explosions happening, all kinds of sensationalist things. Like, for example, one of their talking points is jihad, and jihad obviously meaning like holy or religious struggle, especially in the way of conflict or war. But they have extrapolated that and taken it to a whole new level. They've done Hasbara proud because they've been historically recorded cooperations between the Hasbara units in Israel and teaching and training the Indian propagandists. They've taken the jihad concept to the idea of love jihad, where if an Indian Muslim man woos a Hindu woman or tries to marry her, that's a kind of jihad. And they're being paid by, It's like Muslim Brotherhood, Zohran Mamdani level conspiracy theories. It's the typical Zionist style nonsense propaganda, to the point that in a lot of major states, there are laws now that the government has to intervene if an interfaith marriage is happening, and it has to sort of come to the protection of the pair. It's completely cartoonish, right? So they've radicalized and completely riled up a base, which is a sizable minority. That's the one they're dog whistling to. They like Israel because they think they hate Muslims like no other, right? This is the population that when Modi was getting elected and he was coming close to the Trump administration, and Trump was on his way being elected, they built literal idols to Trump and started worshipping him on TV.
Oh God!
It was displayed. Yeah, it was displayed on TV. And then you had the Howdy Modi when Modi went to Texas and was received by the Indian Americans. And then you had Namaste Trump when Trump came in, flew into India, addressed the stadium. I don't know if you've seen the visuals. He spoke the funniest Hindi that he could come up with in his syphilitic head. And this guy was being worshipped. Second term comes around. Pakistan beats up India. Now they hate Trump. The aggressive Hindu voting population hates Trump. Like the Israelis have this schizophrenic relationship with America, where the demand of America to come in to aid them, and if they don't, when Trump said, stop those planes last time when they were fighting Iran, and you had this insane reaction from Israeli intelligentsia and media and public audiences. If you saw those interviews, they were like, how dare they? We should drop a bomb on New York. It's even an overestimation and a complete underestimation of America and themselves. Like they do not understand the relationship that they have with them. So it's that base who hates Muslims, who is Hindutva extremist, and their sole purpose is to purify the land of India from Muslims. So they take that, they extract that, and they apply that to Israel. So that is the base that they need to satisfy, because the left in India, unfortunately, the Congress party, the liberal parties, are unable to rally a large enough population. They're playing an intergenerational game. They want the voting population to get tired out of bad economic policy because corruption is rampant, infrastructure is crumbling, and they want to create a large enough sizable population of people who are without. And then they can swoop in. It's a cynical calculus, but that's how politics works, obviously. Right. And they're playing the long game. So in the meanwhile, the Modi regime goes around and, calls Israel the fatherland. And even in that, there's like a passivity and a bottom top sort of thing. India is the motherland and Israel is the fatherland. It's like a weird, I don't know how to explain it, man. It's like a subservient kind of servile kind of relationship that they have, which you would see reflected when you see Shehbaz Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, saying that you're the peacemaker and you need to get Nobel Prize. And it's a very subcontinental thing.
That was painful. So the last thing I want to ask you about, brother, is that you mentioned at the outset of our conversation the fuel shortages. Despite the best efforts of the Trump regime, oil has gone back through the barrier of $100 a barrel. That's just this morning. And as being reported by the BBC, this is happening despite the fact that, according to the International Energy Agency, it will release a record 400 million barrels of oil in an attempt to curb the economic impact of the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. So one can only imagine what the price of oil would be without that massive release of reserves by the IEA. So my question to you is, it sounds like Pakistan is already feeling the effects, and we're only 12, 13 days into this thing, to a significant degree of the sharp increase in the price of oil. Could you talk to us about what is the cause of fuel shortages? How serious is this problem for the people of Pakistan?
It's a very serious problem because Pakistan is a very energy dependent country. Our elite have set it up that way. One of the funny things I noted about Greece when reading Yanis Varoufakis' analysis, a very similar thing. that the industry-based or the agri-based elite, when disenfranchised of that notion of being a productive elite, since the formation and the cementing of the EU and the transfer of technologies to Germany, the Pakistani elite eventually, not that the productivity was transferred to Germany here, we simply let go of it because we became a financialized economy. They turned to rent seeking. And one of the rent seeking behaviors, very similar in Greece, is independent power projects. And we had that set up in the 90s as well during the similar liberalization timeline. And you had private parties come in under the garb of bringing in foreign investment. And the notion that was sold to the Pakistani public was that these people are bringing in big money from Western or Eastern or wherever conglomerates, and they're going to set up independent power plants that are going to supply into the main line for the public sector at affordable rates, effective and efficient energy. The truth of it was that the money that was being brought back in was not real foreign investment. It was just money laundering. It was the elite bringing their money back in, washing it through that lens. Secondly, they had given themselves a sweetheart deal where even though Pakistan's energy demands are X, and because the capacity of the IPP plants are 5, 6, 7x in their total summation, they will be paid capacity charges for the electricity that they do not produce, whether that be burning gas or oil or whatever they're doing to produce their electricity. So the capacity charges will be paid to them for the simple fact that they've brought in so much money and they're setting up so many jobs. And the capacity charges will be paid to them in dollars. Now, this deal makes sense when the dollar is like 80 rupees or 90 rupees or 70 rupees back in the day. Right now, the dollar is 300 rupees, right? And it could keep going up. So the IPPs and independent energy producing plants, which are using all kinds of fuel to give electricity to the Pakistani state, is already, so because of that, because we can't afford the capacity charges, because we kind of keep affording to pay them in dollars, we have a balance of payments deficit. Secondly, we end up with something called load shedding. Pakistan is one of the few countries in the 21st century, not even Idlib, when ISIS was in charge in Syria, didn't have energy cutouts. You see? But Pakistan, to this day, every major city has hours of load shedding every single day, where they give electricity to, because even though Pakistan has the ability to produce more electricity than it uses, it just simply does not have the transmission lines or the infrastructure to pump out that electricity. Explain this to a foreigner, they will lose their mind. Pakistan's energy shortages never make sense to anybody. Same is the case with the oil. We have an oil pipeline agreement with Iran. And the fine on it, when we made that oil pipeline deal, we agreed that we would pay $1 million a day for every day that the pipeline gets delayed. It's been 5 or 6 years since right? Wow. And we are not built. We could get a direct oil pipeline into Pakistan, right? And the initial plan was to get it into Pakistan, to send it up through Balochistan and Afghanistan, into Uzbekistan, into Tajikistan. And even by the end, the Indians can come on board that we don't mind cheap oil and gas. Extend the pipeline to us. Never happened.
You're saying for 5, 6 years, the Pakistani government has been paying $1 million a day to Iran?
We're not paid it.
They've not paid it. They've just wow. That's
Pakistan. Yeah.
So is this because the Americans don't want Pakistan buying Iranian oil?
Yes. So this deal started to materialize came to inception in the 90s, materialized in the 2000s. And I think we're supposed to be paying the fine for the past 6 or 7 years, and we have not been paying. Pakistan has this magical tendency to create debts on the public exchequer, transfer that debt into the exchequer, and then when that project or infrastructural scheme fails, the elite who made that deal in the first place come in via the private sector and buy everything out. Do you get the scheme? So, yes. For example, the PIA, Pakistan's premier airline, it flew all over the world. It established the Emirates airline, it established the Saudi airline, it established Qatar Airlines. It was an excellent airline. It was world renowned. It went to the most remote destinations. It had a huge fleet in the 60s and 70s. It was one of those too big to fail things. People, siphoned money, gave jobs to relatives, did all kinds of corruption. And now we have privatized it, where the military and their private business interests and individuals and families have bought out PIA. and the state was paid only 10 billion rupees and none of the debt was transferred to the private buying parties. The debt is still in the exchequer.
Wow. So to go back to the oil situation.
Yeah. So Pakistan has oil. Pakistan has oil. The Pakistan
quite good.
No. Pakistan has oil. Pakistani state does not have oil. Pakistan has money. Pakistani state does not have money. Pakistan has energy. The Pakistani state cannot afford it. Do you see the game? That's the game in Pakistan.
But when you say Pakistan has oil, where is this oil coming from?
Reserve oil. We've been smuggling Irani oil for the last since the T-Rex era. Like since the dinosaurs. We have.
So the country is getting substantial quantities of oil from Iran.
Yes, I use it. I can guarantee you that I have a diesel pickup, right? I guarantee you, especially the diesel, it's all Irani, but it's smuggled in. It's not none of it is in the exchequer.
So because it's smuggled in, the smugglers are making a big cut. And
who are the smugglers?
Who are the smugglers?
Oh, it's us. It's the state, man. It's those few 100,000 people who are like. I'll give an example.
Wow.
The IMF guy. Last 6 months ago, there was a literary festival. It was like a policy festival. It wasn't literary. It was policy kind of economic policy festival in Karachi. They had the local Asia IMF guy come and give like a keynote speech, and he made fun of us. And I don't think the audience picked it up. He said, when you compare the growth rates of similar sized countries like India and Indonesia to Pakistan, it should be in the 30-40%. But the moment Pakistan comes close to 4 or 5%, the government tanks the program because, we can't afford the balance of, payments problem. We can't pay for the exchange, right? For so much going out or so much productivity or so much coming in. They also sold the illusion that Pakistan is a net importer of luxury. Pakistan is not even a big importer, man. It's not even a big importer of anything. It's a completely self-contained economy that includes Iran and it includes Afghanistan and a little bit of India. But it's a completely off-the-grid economy. Our official GDP is $330 billion. Last year alone, Pakistan transacted $380 billion worth of cryptocurrencies. Square that circle.
Wow.
So, one of our ministers last year, his son lost $200 million in Dubai on a crypto trade deal. In one deal.
Was that his own money or was that someone else's money? Who knows? Well, that is quite an eye-opener. Listen, Aman Ullah, it's always a fascinating discussion with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. We've been going for over an hour, so I'm going to pause our discussion there, but I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to resume it in the near future.
Inshallah. No, thank you so much for your time. And Pakistan's a funny place. Everyone should come here. Come to the dark continent of India. Come see the savages. Come see us in our own. What a funny people, man.
One of the countries I have not visited, but very much desire to visit, and I'm going to try to do that in the near future.
Full support.
So we're signing off today on March 12th, 2026.